Hello everyone, welcome to Topic of the Day. In this edition, we will talk about the recent India-UAE summit. Now, there was a virtual summit which was held between India and the United Arab Emirates. This was important as India signed a bilateral free trade agreement with the United Arab Emirates. Let's look into some of the major highlights of this summit. India-UAE CEPA trade deal, that is the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Now, this deal increases the bilateral trade in goods to $100 billion in 5 years, that is from 2022 to 27, and also it increases the trade in services to $15 billion. It will benefit almost 90% of the trade between both the nations. This means that 90% of import and export between India and UAE will be covered under this agreement. Now, in this agreement, there has been inclusion of strong anti-dumping measures. It speaks about investment from the Gulf country into Jammu and Kashmir. The free trade agreement is set to reduce tariffs for 80% of goods and give zero duty access to 90% of India's export to the UAE. India exports are expected to benefit from the zero duty from day one of the agreement. In defense also, this agreement has talked about expansion of maritime cooperation, fight against extremism and terrorism. It has also reiterated the importance of Abraham Accords for peace in the Middle East. Now, what is Abraham Accord? The Abraham Accord is a peace agreement or a joint statement between the state of Israel, UAE, and also United States. It was signed back in August 2020. From the climate point of view, there is cooperation in green energy and also establishment of a joint hydrogen task force to help scale up the technologies. The government has also agreed to establish an Indian Institute of Technology in UAE. There is an MOU signed between the International Financial Service Centers Authority and the Abu Dhabi Financial Authority. And if we talk about UAE investments in India, service sector has 15.78%, sea transport 8.8%, power with 8.34%, the construction or infrastructure activities with 7.15% and construction development with 7.08%. Moving on, let's talk about what is CEPA or Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. This is a kind of free trade pact that covers negotiation on the trade in services and investment and other areas of economic partnership. India has already signed such type of free trade agreements with South Korea and China. Now, if we talk about the significance of this deal, it will give a boost in the bilateral trade to both the countries. The current evaluation of trade between India and UAE stands at $60 billion and it is targeted to increase to $100 billion in 5 years. It will also give enhanced market access and will lead to employment generation as this agreement is intended to create around 1 million jobs. Further on, Indian exporters gain access to the West Asian countries and digital trade is likely to include frameworks on paperless trading. And lastly, this will also give a boost to India's jewelry exports. Now, when we talk about the India-UAE relations, India is the third largest trading partner with bilateral trade in financial year 20 that valued at $59 billion. Also, UAE is India's second largest export destination after the United States. If we talk about investment, the United Arab Emirates is the 8th largest investor in India, and it has largely done investment in the energy sector. If we talk about political relations, in 2019, UAE awarded the highest civilian award, that is the Zayed Medal to PM Modi. Also, there is a cultural agreement between India and UAE that was signed in 1975, and there is a diaspora of around 3.5 million Indians in the UAE. Now, let us take up a practice question on this topic. Consider the following statements. First, India has a trade surplus with the UAE. Second, the UAE is India's largest trading partner among the Gulf countries. Which of the statements given above is correct? You can write your answers in the comment section below. So the correct answer is D, that is neither 1 nor 2. Statement 1 is not correct as bilateral trade between India and UAE is around $43.3 billion in 2020-21. Exports were $16.7 billion. The imports driven by oil, pushed the balance in favor of UAE at $26.7 billion in 2020-2021. Not India, but UAE has a trade surplus with India. Also, the statement second is not correct, as the United Arab Emirates is India's third largest trading partner and the second largest export destination. So the correct answer is D. So this was all for today's topic of the day. For regular updates, you can follow us on our social media handles. And for more such videos, do stay tuned to the next IAS YouTube channel.